Check, 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 check. 1, 2. Check, check, check. 1, 2. Hello, hello, hello. Check, 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 check. Okay. It's good. It's working. Let me just turn the music down a smidge. Okay, alright. Hope everybody's doing well today. Hope you're doing well. Hope your family's doing well. Hope you had a good week, whether work or school or whatever it is that you decided to do this week. Smidge. I think that should do. But we are going to dive into Skeleton Crew episode 7 today, as we are one episode away from the season finale. Okay, I think we're pretty much good. Okay, yeah, like I said, hope everybody's doing well. If you're watching the stream later, you can always, as always, leave comments in the comments below of the video and or stream. As I always say, I read every comment that comes through the channel, whether it's the and or videos and or the like, and I try to respond to some. Most of the time I'm at work when they come through, but yeah, I decided to go live early today just because I have a few things that I need to do later this evening. I usually do my live discussions of anything Star Wars content in the evenings, but because I'm off and I have some things I need to do and a couple videos I need to do for the beginning of next week pertaining to Andor. So yeah, we're gonna dive into episode 1 right now, as long as this doesn't, my laptop bugs sometimes, so bear with me. And it's cold, and I won't turn my heat on till this evening, so I am trying to be as warm as I can be because it is cold. Also, too, if you haven't heard the news, they did announce, well, Hollywood Reporter announced, maybe a plethora of other places announced that Rory McCann, aka the Hound from Game of Thrones, is supposed to be recasted as Baylan Skoll, the character for the Ahsoka series, which I'm definitely looking forward to season 2, whenever it does indeed come around. I think it's a awesome recast, to be honest. And as always, RIP to the homie Ray Stevenson. Hope he's resting well. But yeah, let's dive into that. I may do a live stream to talk more in depth about that, or I may do a video. I'm thinking more of a live stream, but we'll see what happens with that. But let's dive into episode 7, titled "We're Gonna Be in So Much Trouble." As always, per the titles, they usually state the actual title in each of these episodes. And I think that, if I remember correctly, they've been kind of doing that more lately with these Star Wars shows over the last couple of years or a little bit longer, which I don't mind at all. But yeah, opening scene, we have the parents putting together this beacon of hope, like how I would coin it to be. They're trying to set it all up out in the middle of the woods. And, we have all of the parents pretty much doing their best to stay calm, and it's at night and trying to be as secretive as possible. But it kind of makes me think, like, because it made me kind of wonder with the way AT-AT is set up, there are sensors and stuff like that around their job. And a lot of stuff is connected to the robots and stuff. So I kind of feel like even out here in the middle of nowhere, that they are still in tune to what's going on around the forest. It's just that they still have to, the robots still have to go out and investigate what's going on and stuff. So they've pretty much done this throughout the show. I mean, even here on the out in the woods, they did it a couple of times. With Wim and even Wim's dad. So with them putting this together here to really get everything uh, moving so that they can be able to get it up. I just like the fact that they did indeed um, put their heads together and be parents. And a lot of times parents get frustrated with a lot of stuff because they want results when it's pertaining to missing children. I believe that many parents would want to um, be at the forefront of the search for their kids, right? And I just love the fact that they definitely put their heads together and came up with a plan and went out here and made the magic happen with this beacon of hope, to be able to put it together. But ultimately, as always, per any type of Star Wars show, yes, there is a negative response. There's pros and cons to doing something like this, and that pretty much is the fact that the robots were sent out here to investigate. They found the parents out here and they told them, like, hey, like, put that down, step away, type of thing. Um, and let's see where here. Yeah, so they immediately were like, yeah, let's put our heads up. But when excuse me, Neil's mom pretty much said, I'm gonna grab it. I'm gonna try to run, which she did indeed uh, attempt to grab the beacon of hope. Um, and as we see, the robots they stun folks. This is just a recurring thing that continues to be a thing in the show. Is that there are stun guns in Star Wars, and they're stunning each and every parent that pretty much grabs the beacon of hope. And me personally, I thought that uh, Wim's dad was going to be the one to um, make the magic happen, but that did not occur, as he did indeed when he grabbed it to run. He too got stunned, which sucked. I was just like, dag. But in the midst of that, once he dropped it, uh, Fern's mom, Farah, grabbed it and was able to get a little bit more further ahead of it. But I think it worked out per the situation anyway, because it was like hot potato trying to get the Beacon of Hope further out into the woods. And, Fern's Farah was able to get it activated, get it up in the sky. That's pretty much all that needed to occur. Now, did she get stunned as well? Maybe, possibly, but at the end of the day, it went up into the air, got it out into the barrier. And as always, I love hyperspace. I love seeing this part. Doesn't matter if it's on Mandalorian, if it's on Skeleton Crew. I love just seeing the stars flowing so fast because the ships are flying, moving so fast in hyperspace. I love that stuff, right? Always loved it, even on the OT. But we do see Slapball. Neil had mentioned this to Hannah back on episode 4, talking about the game called Slapball. We get a chance to see Neil and Fern playing Slapball here. This was cool. This was dope. Just to see the kids, as always, they're kids. We keep seeing the kids be kids, and I love the fact that they are. Like, in the midst of Fern being the leader and plethora of other things, I do just love the fact that the kids are indeed just kids at the end of the day. They just want to just play. They want to, not have to worry about anything, scared of anything, and this, time, the third, and just feel safe and just be kids, right? But in the midst of all of the slapball game, KB mentions that I believe she was saying she could sort of kind of read the information in front of them to say that they should be arriving home soon. But in the midst of this, Wim, the homie Wim, the one that got everybody in the predicament that they're in, which ends up mentioning this a little bit and probably roughly the next couple of minutes, is that he's not happy. He's totally just like, man, like this sucks. I don't want to go home. Fern comes running up behind him, talking about we're gonna be there. It's we're here. We made it. But Fern, realizes in the midst of all of that, like, yes, he had a moment back in episode 2, if I remember correctly, when he was talking to Silvo about how, him being homesick, about him missing his dad, and everything like that. In the midst of all of that, he still wants to be adventurous. He still would rather be out in space than be at home, because he's basically saying like, I gotta go back home to normalcy. I gotta go back home to going to school and taking this assessment and all the stuff that I really truly didn't enjoy, while being on that Aten. Like, that was all just a regular boring routine, because he always hoped of going on an adventure. And now he's sad and down, depressed that the adventure's coming to a close, right? But I get it. Me personally, I do. Is that you want something fresh, you want something new, you want something more fun than what you normally do. I mean, we as adults, we all have a specific routine. Many of us do. We go to work, go do our job, whatever, come home, eat dinner. um, if you have kids, you spend time with your kids, spend time with your family, or whatever, and then you go to bed and you do it all over again. It's the same routine. You may do something, get up, head out, go leave the house at a specific time, get to work at a specific time. Same routine. Having various conversations at the water cooler with coworkers and stuff, blah blah blah. But you want to have, we want to be. A lot of us want to be like Wim. We want to have an adventure. I just mentioned to a friend of mine a while ago, of saying like, hey, I would rather not be on planet Earth, because I am a gigantic Star Wars fan. I would rather uh, head into outer space, because outer space is way more fun than being here on planet Earth. But that's just me personally. Um, just because that sounds so much more refreshing, fresh, peaceful, all of that. And I get how Wim, even in this moment here, specifically stating that, I should have never pushed that green button that he's technically touching here, that we don't know exactly what it does, but it could have been dangerous. And he at least did not push it, but he did touch it. But I've also stated that too, that the color green has stood out a lot throughout this show, specifically. Um, but in the midst of all of that, Wim, his friends are just saying like, hey, like, I had fun, like, I don't, I want to enjoy. It was fun and it was enjoyment and everything. And then even Fern, she was saying, that's the funny thing about Fern. Fern was thinking too. She did mention this to Wim, is that she said to Wim that, hey, like, maybe they will let us keep the ship. That, yeah, Wim was correct in his response. Like, yeah, right. That wouldn't happen. How in the world could kids? Because there's still the potential, very dangerous potential, of somebody pushing a button and them heading right back out into space. That to think that they can keep this ship, um, and maybe even possibly fly it around, because again, that's what they would think to do. That's just not the case at all. But I totally, I understand both sides. Like I said, I really do. But in the midst of all of that, we see that um, Brutus and crew and Silvo, they arrive right outside of the viewpoint of AT-ATN, to show that the barrier does indeed exist here. There's a lot of storms and lightning and flashing and all of that happening underneath the clouds here. But in the midst of all of that, Brutus does recognize a danger to the barrier. Automatically goes to Silvo and says, like, this is your precious AT-ATN that you've been hyping up. If you take a ship through that thing, it's gonna pretty much take everything out. Any and everything out. And Brutus pretty much was ready to uh, send your boy, send the homie Silver to because he pushes the button here, sending him to outer space, sending him to his spatially grave, right? But as always, we do love Silvo's character because of his witty tongue, him being able to talk himself out of a jam for the most part. 95% of the time he's able to do so. And he even presses Brutus to say, like, hey, like, because I like this part of the episode, this scene specifically. He's saying to Brutus, are you dumb, are you stupid? And it even says it to Brutus, saying, hey, you need to see it in front of your face for it to exist for you. And we know there are plenty of people in the world who are, again, we as human beings. I think I mentioned this in the last stream for episode 6. Is that because we're human, because we're visual first, we see things before we respond or however we're gonna do. That in this moment here in the scene, Silvo's pretty much pressing everybody to think outside the box, to say, hey, like, the planet is right here. Ad-Aden is literally in front of your faces. There has to be a way to get through this barrier. There's you can't just automatically just assume that this trip to get to this moment wasn't beneficial for us. But Brutus and Silva still have the back and forth, and Silvo's just like, hey, like, this is it. We can make this happen. It's right here. Literally, the Old Republic is right here at our fingertips, and you all are ready to just turn around and just not let this happen. But Silvo does offer to hop on the ship himself, to try to get to try to go down there. But Brutus is like, nah, son, we're gonna get a volunteer. I'm not gonna be tricked by you to go out there and do your own thing and then leave basically on your own. And the volunteer was this person. I lost my train of thought on this character's name, but this is the one that Silva did mention, talking about having his own world and building upon it because he has an endless amount of credits. But he gets into the Ravager 1 spaceship that he calls to go out into the Ad-Aden atmosphere here. And, definitely for me, I was like, I wonder how this is going to go. But at the same time, because he went out there, I was just like, I wonder how this is going to go, but I kind of feel like it's going to be a bad thing. They do pull up the information as far as the ship here. And let me see. He was basically giving feedback on, they're saying like visibility is low, there's turbulence, blah blah blah, and then it became really bad turbulence, but didn't specify specifically, as far as I remember, specify specifically what was the cause of the turbulence. And yeah, R.I.P. to the homie here. It's a wrap. It's over. It's over. Even on the screen, basically vitals and stuff per the screen flatlined. All of that. It's a wrap. And then that's when Brutus like shoves Silva, because Silva said maybe we could try again. I thought that was funny. Let's see, where are we? But he shoves him. He's like, don't do this. And I wasn't sure how this was going to play out for me as a viewer. They put him in there. Silva was like, look, like, he even called, I think this is it. No. I thought I had SM33 on here as a screenshot. He even called SM33 just to kind of calm things down because everybody was riled up, right? Uh, that's not. I thought I grabbed a screenshot for SM33 here. I thought I did. There we go. Yeah, SM33 pretty much was saying, like, per the log, uh, Renard's log, is that the barrier was basically just the barrier, but inside, past the barrier, the world sat. And they were getting ready to push that button to send him out into his doom. But then they get the notification of the kids arriving, basically. Where did we go? Oh, they pull up the information, the info of the ship. They're basically saying, like, yeah, like, they're basically saying, like, shoot it down, but I'm glad that Silvo picked it up, because that's the thing. Like I said, Silvo is smart. He really is. There's a reason why he was the captain in the first place. There really is. I mean, he's pretty much gotten his crew to various places, and he was able to pick it up to say, hey, the ship is the key. So this was a wise thing for him, which I found funny too, because they could have easily just pushed the button and sent him on his way. But I'm glad that he was able to at least get out of there. But again, like I said, we got the kids here. They arrive on the outside of Aten. Well, the barrier at least. And where are we? They immediately get grabbed by Brutus's ship. Reeled him in, pulled him in. But I do like this conversation here. Real brief. Brutus is saying, like, like, hey, like, this, you played your cards well, basically. He even mentioned, if I remember correctly, something on the lines of, like, the crew have tolerated you or something like that. But I do like Silvo's response and basically saying, like, he's like, nah, the crew actually likes me, or loves me, whichever one, like or love, whichever or both. And he, Brutus was like, nah, it's not the case. But he's standing on that specific spot because he repeats it. So like, nah, like I'm right. The crew likes me, loves me. But then the doors of the ships open, and I do like this part, but I found it interesting as well, because I do like that Brutus is the only one to step forward to approach the ship. Brutus has been pretty much like a background villain for most of the entire show. Think about doing another video. I've been thinking about doing a video on Brutus anyway, because Brutus does have a presence about, this character, right? But per the show itself, he's been pretty much a background villain for most of the show. And I honestly think that that Silvo indeed was the right path to go as far as the main villain. I honestly thought that him and Bruce were actually gonna really like battle it out a little bit extra, per the show. But this is pretty much where the climactic end of Brutus comes into fold, because the kids grab him with the claw. They've been using this a few times, even when flying, riding on it back in episode 4, if I remember correctly. But where are we? I just lost it. Okay. But they're, of course, the crew is shocked. They're ready to start shoosting, right? Let me shoost. But we have KB here, who is using her voice changer to kind of try to confuse and throw people off and try our best to get them out of this situation. Um, but in the midst of that, Silvo picked it up easily. I can't remember if he knew that it was them, that he specifically knew that it was KB that was speaking. But he does use the force to get rid of the handcuffs here, basically. He grabs the gun, and like I said, the end of Brutus comes within the next, basically like 20 seconds. Here, KB had mentioned saying like get back, or this will be the end of your captain or whatever. Where are we? But in the end, Silva took advantage. To me, this was the right call by Silva to do. It was best, because if he would have kept Brutus alive any longer, it would have been the wrong step to do. It was a smart play for Silva to take Brutus fully out completely here. So RIP to Brutus. And let me see, where are we? Which now the crew here are shocked and everything, but that's when Silva pretty much makes the speech about how Brutus was, he was, what did he say, sniveling, conniving, because he did mention even in last week's episode that Brutus was a good first mate that can get you to a specific place, but he's not going to get you. He may get you to the goal line, but he won't get you the final score, the touchdown or whatever the case. But I'm here. I'm now your re-captain. Go get these kids. And let's get ready to go and get our true reward down here on Ad-Aden. But in the midst of all that, the beacon of hope does indeed finally get up, all the way up and out to space. Just flying not too far from the ship here. And we do see that the kids are chilling out, being guarded. Let's see. But in the midst of all of that, we also noticed that Silva put his mask back on. I found it interesting that Silva put his mask back on. I thought that this was just an interesting take on the character. But at the same time, I understood it because they're getting ready to go down to a world that they don't recognize. So he has to get back into captain mode, focus mode of like, hey, like I'm the captain. These are my crew. You all don't need to know what I look like, basically. So I felt, like I said, I found it interesting, but I get it. I understand that it was still a good enough decision by Silva to do this by putting his mask back on. But in the midst of that, the Beacon of Hope did send out a signal, and that signal pretty much was what it was. If I can find you, it was the parents. They left a message. They left a voicemail, whatever the case, in hologram form, right? Basically saying, like, all the parents talking to all their kids, saying, hey, like, you all, wherever you are, you're not in trouble, which they technically are, but you're not in trouble. This is what parents do. They try to what is it, convey to their kids still a safe space to be around them in the midst of them conversing with them about what they did wrong or what they did bad. and the parents were leaving specific hopeful messages to all of them that I really enjoyed, that they all indeed got a chance to speak. We got a chance to see Neil's dad here, and I do believe Neil's dad was in the first episode when they got back from school, if I remember correctly. We just didn't really see his dad, not fully, but I do like that we got a chance to see Neil's dad here. And like I said, all the parents got a chance to say whatever they needed or had to say to their kids. But in the midst of that, they were pretty much just, saying that, hey, this is how you get back, you get through the barrier and stuff. You have to find an emissary of, if I remember correctly, it was an emissary or something like that of Ad-Aden to be able to get you all through the barrier and back home. This is what needed to occur. But in the midst of all of that, Silva and them were listening very carefully to what's being stated by their parents. So and even Wim's dad mentions it in this episode. Mentions that the let me see, I think this is it. Yeah, he mentions that this information you weren't supposed to know because you're just children. You were gonna find this information out as an adult. I found that very interesting. Is that maybe this is some information that is told to every kid when they become a specific age, when they get to closer to adult, or maybe it's still same thing. When you become 18, years old, per the reality society of stating that, okay, you're 18, now you have legal right to do a small amount of stuff, but then 3 years later, when you become 21 or whatever, that's when you're actual full adult and you get to do a whole plethora. The world, you just got to wait 3 more years, but the world becomes even more open to you. So it kind of makes me think that per how Ad-Aden runs their system is that they're the kids are indoctrinated in this Ad-Aden culture, and they go through this assessment test and all of that to be able to see exactly where they stand, where they're supposed to fit and everything. And then once they become a specific age, or specific ages, that's when they get and gain key information on the actual functioning world of Ad-Aden, do's and do nots, this, that, and the third. And it kind of makes me kind of question, like, what other information is being held back from the kids, and what are the then, say 21-year-old adults now, when they become that specific age, are really fully given per a conversation. So yeah, but in the midst of all that, that's when the kids were just saying, like, hey, we need to take back the ship, we need to come up with a plan. But of course, Precious Wim had to be the one to he didn't even second guess his decision. He just said attack, and they're trying to fight and trying to do whatever to try to regain the ship back. That didn't work out at all, like not even a little bit. Not fully, but it still, to me, was sort of kind of a bit of a smart play, because we find out that per the pirate code that they, per what Smee says, is that pirates are only allowed to have one ship, and the only way you can have another one, I love the fact that pirates do this. The only way that you can have another one is if you actually say, the words of you claiming to be the captain of a ship. And I do love how Wim attempted to try to make that decision. He attempted to try to blurt out, like, "Hey, I'm captain of the ship. I'm taking command and control. Blah blah blah." But Silvo stepped in quickly, grabbed him. It was just like, "I'm the captain. Everybody takes orders from me. I claim this ship is mine." And yeah, and in the midst of all of that, Smee SM33 does sit back and says, he says, "I Captain," but Fern says unclaimsies, and they've been this harpens back to episode 1 when they were talking about claims is being arriving at the outside spot of the ship and all of that. But Silvo's like, that's not how it works. And Fern's like, get everybody off the ship, and he, Silvo thought that he could literally not, kind of like shut that down, but SM33 knocks him out. I didn't see that coming. That right hand was right on the nose, right on the money. Knocks Silvo out cold. Because I think personally, I think that SM33 still was more comfortable with Fern and crew way more than Silvo was, to be honest. Let me see. And then that's when he pulls up his shields, fends off the blaster fire, and knocks out the crew members here and tosses them off the ship. But in the midst of all of that, Silvo, he woke. He sat up, dazed, confused, not knowing where he's at, not knowing what's going on, and he sees that the ship is getting ready to fly off. But of course, when he disappears from the screen, I said, yeah, he's getting on the ship. There was no way that he wasn't getting on this ship. Not at all. And they were excited. There was a little bit more extra hope. They hugged each other. Like, yes, they're fully officially getting ready to go home. They're flying off. The bad guys are shooting at their ship. I kind of was worried about the back parts of the ship getting hit and damaging them flying and through the planet's atmosphere. But that's when Vane was the one that stepped in to say, like, send out. Where are you? Where's Vane? Here's Vane. Vane says, send out ships to go down and get them, to stop them from heading to where they're heading to at Aden. Where are we? And we see the actual insides, because we did see these things back on at Akron, because they were deactivated because the barrier was for that planet was basically destroyed. And we see that these activated things here for the barrier here are electrical. They're lightning based. They're a whole bunch of plethora of stuff. Now I found it interesting because when we find out that the ship here that they're flying on, yes, they're flying through this atmosphere. These things are, basically doing this, and that is destroying ships. We find out that the ship that they're riding on is basically seemingly to being at Aten based. Like, it's a ship from at Aten. It's not it's not an actual dangerous ship, because the non-Aten ships are basically getting destroyed. But we didn't see this occur until here, when they were bypassing those mechanisms, that it turned green here randomly to let us know, and of course let Wim know, because Wim was the one to saying, like, hey, this is Aten ship. It turned green here, but we didn't see it in the background. I kind of feel like that was a good enough spot, though. It was just a little bit interesting that they decided to not show this prior, because it did make me wonder, like, oh, is the ship going to get, the ship that they're riding, or is it going to get hit or whatever? But to see that it did not occur was cool. And then we finally see the little old planet within the big gigantic barrier of Aten here. We see it. We see that it has its own sun and everything, which was just cool. And this is why I love outer space, guys. This is why I really want to hop a rocket ship and get off of planet Earth and just head into outer space, because outer space just seems just a whole bunch more peaceful for me personally. But I do like this spot here that the kids got a chance to see, and they're just like, this has to be it. This has to be home, right? So this must be at, this is where our parents are. This is where our homes are. we're here, we've arrived, So yeah, it was just like exciting for a brief moment, very very brief. Um, like I said, everybody's excited to just be like, yes, we're here, we made it. Um, but in the midst of that, they hear Silvo's voice in the background, because Fern she did mention like, hey, like my mother, my mom did lie. We're totally gonna be in trouble, but we're but that's okay. We're not gonna worry about that. But like I said, that's when Silva says you should be. He pops up. They're like, oh my gosh, but at the same time, we're like, what's getting ready to happen next? Where are you? SM-33 stood up to try to attack, and yeah, Silva fully takes SM-33 out. Fully. I'm like, man, not the homie, even though he don't know me, and I'm rhyming accidentally. I was upset. I was like, not my boy, Smee. But to me, it just goes back to the fact that throughout the show, Smee has been pretty much knocked out, pretty much almost a lot of times. And I kind of feel like this moment here maybe is possibly the final kind of like curtain call for Smee for SM-33, due to the fact that throughout, like I said, throughout the show, Smee's been pretty much just like knocked out but not fully taken out. But in the midst of that, Silva tells all the kids to get down, don't say a word, don't say nothing. He's trying to touch stuff, and excuse me, Silva's trying to figure out the ship. But I thought too that he was gonna fully step on the little rat here, but he just boots it to the side. I thought he was gonna like stomp on it, but I'm glad that he didn't. But like I said, Silva tries to send out a message to the ship, but we found out that the barrier is blocking communication. Neil tries to mention something. KB tries to mention something, but Silva's pretty much like, look, y'all need to just hush, don't say a word. We're just gonna just be here, ride this ship down, we're gonna figure some stuff out. Because he did say something to, I think it was Neil more so. Yeah, it was Neil, but I do love that Wim had mentioned like, hey, yelling to him like, hey, leave him alone. But like I said, Silva was like, look, like you all have been a pest. You've been pest for me, basically. He was just like, especially you talking about Wim, which makes me kind of still wonder about his background, because he's like, you all. He mentions to the kids like, you all are weak. And a lot of times when somebody says something like that, it's more so a nudge at themselves because of who they were to then become who they are now. It kind of makes me wonder. Like many fans have been wondering. I see it a lot on social media, of wondering of who Neil is. What's his real background? Was he around during Order 66? Was he a former Padawan? If he was, who's his master? And blah blah blah. He has the Force. He can use it a little bit, not fully. He hasn't fully been trained. But maybe, like I mentioned in last week's live stream, is that I'd heard rumors that episode 7 from this week was going to be about his background, but that wasn't the case at all. So maybe we'll get that in episode 8. Maybe the plan is there is going to be a season 2. But in the midst of all of that, Silva's pretty much just saying like, once we get down here, we're gonna just figure it out. Don't say a word. But he does threaten them, because he mentions their parents. He ignites the lightsaber again. He basically tells them like, I'll take them out even slowly in front of you, and I will do it. And it makes me literally, because we see how Silva really is, because the kids were warned so many times, like, don't trust him, by a plethora of people. Kim, Pocket, and a couple other people, like telling them, warning them about him, is that he's very dangerous, and we're seeing how dangerous he can be, right? Let me see, and then that's when we get the scene with the parents and the robot. Now, there's something interesting in this room. The robot comes in, talking to the parents about them being in trouble, basically. Questioning, wondering why did they, put this, beacon of hope together. Basically, like I said earlier in the stream, like the parents were basically saying, like, we were basically telling the robot, like, we're impatient. We needed results. Like, you all weren't doing anything. Even KB's parents basically telling them, like, hey, you all just didn't listen to what we were conveying to you. About what needed to happen. It felt like the supervisor wasn't going to do anything about our, trying to find our kids. But in the midst of all of that, when the robot leaves the room here, there's this thing sitting in this room. We've seen something like this, like these murals and stuff like that throughout the show. And this one made me kind of curious, wondering, what does this specific thing mean? Because we have two women here on the sides of this person, this other woman in the middle. Looks like they're holding something up into the air. I couldn't really tell. But it kind of makes me wonder, like, what else could this symbolize? If it's just a semblance of something, of some type of hope for the planet of Ad-Aten. But I was really curious. I'm always curious about stuff like this. Like, what does this stuff mean? Because there are reasons why things like these are placed in specific spots on these planets. But in the midst of all of that, that's when KB's one mom basically tells the other mom that, hey, like, the thing activated, KB is home. I'm glad that they have this to let them know, to keep track of their child. This is really just really cool, right? Let me see where I just lost where I was at. Where did we go? Here we go. And when we get out here, we see that the ship is finally arrived past the barrier, past the atmosphere of Ad-Aten. They're here. We see other people outside, but also in the midst of all of that, I forgot to mention too. Let me grab it here. The supervisor did. Well, I think that the supervisor. This is the credited actor for the voice of the supervisor is Stephen Fry. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. Let me try to fix this here. So Stephen Fry, this actor here, if you recognize him, he is the credited actor that voiced the supervisor, and it kind of makes me wonder: is he in the show? Are we going to see the supervisor in episode 8, the season finale, come Tuesday night? Because at the same time, I kind of feel like the announcement that the supervisor made about, hey, like, there is somebody arriving, all personnel, letting you all know that this is, that somebody's arriving, please, be prepared, type of thing. Makes me wonder, is he gonna actually be in the final episode of the season here? And I gotta fix this. There we are. And we see that the bottom of the ground here pops up out of the ground, basically to state. And at first, I apologize for the noise in the background. That's my neighbors. They have a like I mentioned prior live streams, is that they have a pipeline running through my guest room here that runs their washer. Plus their dryers up there too, but the washer runs the water through the pipeline, through my ceiling in my guest room, and it sucks, especially when sometimes if I'm sleeping in the guest room, because this is where I do a lot of my content stuff, recording and stuff. It happens. But the ship lands, but that's what I was trying to say. that in the background I couldn't really understand in the beginning, but there was an automated robot saying like, "Please stand back." It was kind of muffled in the beginning, but eventually I was able to really understand. It was saying, "Please stand back." Um, this ship is basically landing, and then we have Silvo and the kids coming off the ship. Let's see, I think I got ahead of my screenshots, but he turns around to face the kids once he gets off the ship, and they give us the view of his lightsaber, because I want to say most of the kids, I don't know if all of them, they looked at the lightsaber basically to tell them like, hey, like, remember what I said back on the ship. Remember that, you keep your mouth shut while we're down here, and your basically your parents and yourselves will be for the most part all right. Um, and in the midst of all of that, the robot steps to Silvo. Now, I found it interesting to per this conversation with Silvo and the robot is that the robot basically asks Silva like, "Hey, you must be, a member of the board, basically, or whatever the case. Welcome type of thing." And Silva was just like, "Yes." He was, "Yes, that is me, that is I." The one thing that I found interesting is that per how AT-AT runs its world, you would have thought that they would have put something in place to verify this person who arrives randomly on their on their um on their planet. I thought that that's what they were going to do, and then it would have went in a different type of direction, but that did not happen at all. It just seemed a little bit too easy for anybody to arrive here, anybody to come here, anybody to just get down into the vault and do whatever. Now, will that occur in episode 8? Maybe, possibly, but it was just something that I thought that found very interesting here. But in the midst of that, they did show the rest of the parents rolling through the crowd here, and Wim's dad yells his name out, but of course Wim can't hear his pops through all of the noise and stuff. But we did shift to see Wim looking up, and looking through the opening above them as they're basically going down, elevated down into to arrive at the vault. But in the midst of that, we get the conversation about the kids here, their parents being notified. Silvo's still controlling stuff, saying, "Hey, like, get them back on the ship." And he's conversing with the robots, basically saying like, how, I need to get contact with my crew, with my ship up above, but they're like, communications are cut off, and he's like, "Well, I need, but you can talk to the supervisor." Like, yeah, talk to the supervisor, but um, uh, uh, get me your best refreshments. But in the midst of that, we do see this area here, which I believe this is the machine that actually creates the Old Republic Mint, all of the credits. This is what I believe that this is what it is. Now we do hear a lot of banging in the background. I don't know if it's literally like specifically in the actual area where that ball is. But we do hear, like I said, we do hear some banging in the background, like something's being created, and I kind of feel like that's that sound of the credits being made. Um, but in the midst of all of that, they eventually get down to the vault, and yeah, the vault opens. But I do like this spot here with the vault. I do like that once they get here and they're walking, as the doors open, we see the gold shimmering light shining on the ground. This lets me and plethora of all of you recognize that this is real. Like I mentioned in my video yesterday of saying, the vault is real. I did like this spot here. Just literally, as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh man, it's the vault. The vault's opened, and this is it. But in the midst of all this, we see the credits in the background. But Silvo did ask the robot, saying, "Hey, how many vaults are there?" And the robot says 1,139. So there are a plethora more. Now, does that mean that all the vaults are on this planet? Probably, more than likely. Um, And per this room here, there's definitely thousands of credits in this room. Um, and maybe we'll see another vault or whatever, maybe possibly. But Silva walked up to this set of credits here. He leaned down into, and for me as a viewer seeing this, seeing Silva just like disbelief, to be honest, in this moment. Even here, when he reached up to grab the one credit that he's going to grab, there was a hesitation of him grabbing it, because to me, my mindset of seeing Silva get ready to grab this credit is, man, I touched this. This is it. All of my hard work pays off because I'm getting ready to touch this one credit, right? This one credit that I've been longing to, for the many more, longing to grab. And when he picks it up, the many credits fall in front of him, and he's grabbing and allowing them to fall on his head and in his hands. And in the midst of that, he's, just like laughing in excitement. He did it. It's real. It's right here. Um, and in the midst of that, the kid's sitting off to the side and uh, watching in disbelief. But the parents ended up arriving officially and finally down below. And they see them. The kids see them. They had stood up and everything. This was more so hope for us, the viewer, for the kids, because they actually got a chance to actually hug their parents. Really, the parents really love on them. Excited to see them. All of them. Like, now there was a split, like a split second of a hesitation from Wim's dad. Like like they both stopped, and Wim's dad was like, "Nah, son, you're coming him out." There was a split second of a hesitation from Wim's dad hugging him, but he grabbed him and really hugged. I love that. But I did like that spot where he hesitated, because it was just like, because they don't, women and his father don't have that father son bond. Wim's dad back on the ship in the message even tells uh Wim that, hey, I apologize for even not believing in you in the first place. So it's just something that they can build upon to say there's a second season, because Wim's dad is one of those fathers that just goes to work, comes home, and at least making sure that the lights are on, and he's a busy parent, which I believe he would love to spend quality time with his son, but he still has his adult duties at the same time. So he, to me, more than likely is a parent that has to really learn how to be open towards his son and allowing his son to be open towards him. So it's just one of those relationships that we know that he loves his son. It's just that he has to really learn to trust his son a little bit more, and they can have an actual authentic relationship that I believe Wim has been longing for, because mom is not around, and I believe that plays a big key role in why Wim and his father are not fully close. Um, but like I said, love that Neil's mom. But at the same time, I'm wondering where. At the same time, I'm wondering where Neil's dad is. Like, man, like Neil's dad wasn't even. He only got shown one time back on the message. That was it. I'm like, where's Pops? Because he was there next to Neil's mom that one time. So I was just like, man. But in the midst of all of that, we see Silva approaching. He's all smiles and stuff. Uh, Farah had asked Fern about how did this happen. Like I said, Silva pops up, and it pretty much activates the lightsaber in front of everybody, but more so closer to Neil and his mother. And that's pretty much the end of the episode, because I think the backgroround they even show the background in the back. So So yeah, that's pretty much episode 7. Um, that I really, really enjoyed a lot. Definitely makes me ponder on some other stuff as far as AT-AT is concerned. Um, Curious and wondering what else. Pretty much episode 7. Okay, cool. I thought that the music wasn't playing for a second, but like I said, I'm curious. I'm wondering, like, there has to be some other stuff going on in the background of AT-AT. I'm wondering about that. Maybe we'll get some more of that information in episode 8 in the season finale for this coming Tuesday. But in the midst of all of that, there's still a plethora of stuff that we can talk about as far as the show in its totality. But once episode 8 finalizes, then I can really dive into some extra stuff as far as the show. Something interesting enough that I'm more likely going to talk about in a video, but I'm going to slightly mention this here in this stream, is that when Kim talked about AT-AT and it being an Old Republic planet, we know that Old Republic was years ago, like thousands of years ago. Silvo had mentioned AT-AT being hundreds of years. So if it's hundreds of years per the timeline compared to Old Republic, hundreds of years would begin because a lot of people, and I even noticed it too because I read a little bit of the books. I have a few of the books here. I just have to get them. Is the High Republic, the lightsaber that Silvo carries is in the color of the High Republic. Like I said, Silvo mentions hundreds of years of the planet, but again, per what Kim said, is that this AT-AT planet is during the Old Republic, and that is thousands of years. So it just kind of makes me curious. I'm wondering, like, when, how old is this planet? Is it thousands, hundreds? I still want to believe that it is hundreds. I still want to believe that it is an Old Republic planet. And I'm just curious about that. Just curious about the world, the culture more so. And like I said before, wondering and curious, are we going to see Stephen Fry, aka the actor who voiced the supervisor in the background, announcing that the ship was arriving? Are we going to see Stephen Fry in episode 8 for the finale on Tuesday, coming up Tuesday night? I'm hopeful that we will. Because I've seen other people think that just the entire world is just run by robots, which includes the supervisor being a robot as well. Who knows for sure with that. But yeah, adding just the planets and stuff, just how it's functioned and all of that. I'm curious. I'm wondering. Hopeful that there will be a season 2. There might be. Um, uh, that again, that's just like a small rumor that I heard. But as always, I'm waiting for Lucasfilm to actually make that announcement. Same thing with the recasting of Baylan Skoll that supposedly is occurring, but the only thing is I haven't heard, or we haven't heard anything from Lucasfilm, anything from them at all stating that this was true. But that's floating around a lot over the last 10 or so hours today. So I thought about doing a video about that, but I don't know if I will or not. But yeah, because Baylan Skoll is like literally like my favorite character on Ahsoka, outside of Grand Admiral Thrawn. So yeah, but episode 7 was really good, really fun. I'm like I said, I'm just curious and hopeful. Maybe because they're doing it with Andor, they're coming out with I think 1 or 2 books based on Andor. I'm definitely gonna grab that Mon Mothma book coming out. I can't remember the title of it at the moment, but I'm gonna grab that, and once I grab it and read it, I'm gonna cover it here on the channel for sure, because we all know that Andor is one of my favorite shows, Star Wars shows, currently. Because April 22nd is not that far away, only a few months away, literally almost 4 months away from season 2. So, and I'm hopeful that even with this show, that maybe we'll get a couple of books on Skeleton Crew. Maybe we'll get a book centered around that, because I feel like that would be dope to me. That would be really, really cool. So I'm just curious about that. But yeah, But with that, I'm about to be out because, like I said, I need to get ready to push to work on a couple of videos for the channel for um, the beginning of the week coming. And I may try to do a video for tonight for tomorrow. We'll see what happens with that. But with that, like I said, if you watch the entire live stream, leave some comments, comment section below this video. Like I always say, I see every comment that comes through. Most of the time I'm at work, but I get the notifications on my phone and I just read them, and I'm just like enjoying a lot of what you all are saying on my videos. It's just really just fun just to converse with you all whenever I do get a chance to chat with you all. But I'm out. I'll holler at y'all later. Enjoy the rest of your evening, noon, and night. Stay safe, stay humble, and remember the force will be with you always.